250 mambabatas ang pumabor sa panukala, habang 6 ang tutol at 1 ang nag-abstain. Kabilang sa mga tumutol ang Makabayan Bloc. Magiging banta raw kasi sa privacy at kalayaang makipag-usap kung may isa sa batas ito.
Let us pass the SIM card law ASAP. We passed it already with lots of debates in the previous Congress, and we passed it with the support. It was bipartisan support. Let's pass it again. Once again, as soon as possible, hopefully before the break, to show the public that we mean business when it comes to stopping all sorts of tech scams.
Soon, registration of subscriber identity modules or your SIM cards will be mandatory. The measure has been approved by both houses of Congress, and Senator Grace Poe, one of the principal authors, is expecting President Marcos' signature on it before the year ends. Let's flesh out the SIM Registration Act in this episode of The Chiefs. Welcome to The Chiefs. Ako po si Roby Alampay. Kasama ko po sa studio Ed Lingao of One News. Tapos online kasama natin si Pamintuan of the Philippine Star. She's joining us from Manila. And then from Quezon City, Luchi Cruz-Valdes of News 5. Chiefs, happy and
Midweek. Midweek. Wednesday.
Good evening.
Nawala ka na.
Nawala na ako. Ano mga, set me right. Ano bang balita? Maybe we can mark the week that way.
Kapapasa lang nung budget ng House of Representatives, no, yung national budget for next year. 5.268 trillion. Final na yun.
On third and final reading.
Third and final reading.
Direkta nila ngayong gabi.
Yung sa House yan?
House yan.
House yan, House. Oo. Well, mabibilis na siguro yan. Total, sinertify na daw ni President Marcos as urgent, di ba?
So they can skip the 3-day rule between second and third reading.
But then now it goes to the Senate where, well, if you take the tone of the senators we've been talking to.
Swabe na yan. Parang out of respect.
Out of respect. Ay, kahapon, the other day, Senator Sani Angara, basically, ang sinabi niya, rinig-comment na ng executive. Di parang...
Hindi kami ng DBM eh.
Parang hiya naman kami. Di ba? So anyway, we're not really expecting any surprises on that front. Ano pang mga balita, Ami?
Well, at least hindi daw natin kailangan mag-import ng rice, kahit nawasak yung rice granary natin. We have enough supply, although sabi naman ng yung mga agriculture groups, baka daw by next year, tulangin tayo o kaya magtaas ng presyo ang bigas.
Yeah. Now, we have enough supply kasi nag-import na tayo eh.
Kasi
imported din yung
Need niya to import. Need to import, sabi ng Department of Agriculture at this time.
So what that really means is no need to import more.
Oo nga.
Pero
talaga naman nag-i-import tayo ng bigas.
Pero remember, doon sa unang sona ni President Marcos, he said, he was leaning a lot on the remaining harvest season, di ba? Tapos ito nga nasa lanta, but then we'll see if that holds. In the meantime, we will talk about the SIM Registration Act. We'll speak to our first guest after a short break. Keep it right here on One News. The SIM Registration Act has hurdled both the House of Representatives and the Senate. What's in it? Our first guest explains. Welcome back, the Chief Navotas Representative Toby Tiangco. Congressman Tiangco is also the chairperson of the House Committee on Information and Communications Technology. Thanks for joining us, Congressman Tiangco. It looks like from the batasan. Tama po ba? Are you still there?
Nasa session hall pa po ako. Kakatapos lang po ng session namin. Kaka-adjourn lang 10 minutes ago.
Okay.
Tapos na.
Okay, akala ko po, yumuyo ko kayo. Baka makita kayo ng teacher, kausap kami.
Ay, hindi po. Tapos na po.
Baka lang patayin nga ng ilaw dyan.
Okay. Well, thank you for...
Ba't nandiyan na si Ed? Si Ed ba yan?
Si Ed pa. Nandito na rin si Ed.
Oo,
Sabay tayo lumipat.
okay.
Okay. Well, sir, remind us about the SIM Registration Act. And, di ba, dati parang binito pa nga ni President Duterte yung previous version nito. Remind us of what this is for and bakit nga ba nabito dati and diretso ko na, anong pagkakaiba nitong naipasa nyo?
First of all, kaya siya na-veto dati doon sa veto message ni President Duterte is because nagkaroon ng rider, nagkaroon ng dagdag na wala naman sa original version na required ang registration ng social media accounts. No? Yun po yung reason kung bakit vinito ni President Duterte. So dito, sa version nito, wala na po yung registration ng social media accounts. Purely registration of SIM po itong pinasa ng both houses of Congress.
Okay, so diretso lang po na. So what does that mean for sa lahat? Well, lahat tayo may cellphone, di ba? Lahat tayo may SIM card. So ano ibig sabihin? Kailangan nakatali na yung pangalan ko. How exactly does the registration happen?
Okay, ganito po yan. Kung kayo po ay may existing prepaid SIM, di ba? Yung prepaid SIM kasi hindi po siya rehistrado. So kung kayo po ay may existing prepaid SIM, upon the effectivity of the act, o pag naging batas po ito, within 180 days, dapat i-register nyo po yung SIM nyo. Ibig sabihin, pupunta po kayo online, magsasubmit kayo ng isa sa mga valid government-issued IDs, mag-fill up kayo ng form, at pag na-register na yan, okay na yung SIM nyo. Pag hindi po kayo nag-register within 180 days, ang mangyayari po dyan, yung SIM nyo will be deactivated by the telco. Yan po ang nakasaad sa batas. Ngayon, pag kayo naman po ay bumili ng bagong SIM, pagkatapos ng effectivity nitong batas na ito, lahat po ng mabibili niyong SIM ay deactivated. Ibig sabihin, hindi niyo siya magagamit. Bibili kayo ng SIM sa tindahan, hindi niyo siya magagamit. Ang mangyayari, kailangan niyo muna i-register yung SIM na yon, at pag na-register niyo yung SIM na yon, tsaka lang i-activate ng telco yung SIM na yon.
Okay, Congressman, ang laging sinasabi na dahilan para i-register ang mga SIM na ito ay dahil daw crime busting daw ito. I mean, it's that in effect, it's going to reduce the incidence of crime. Pero ang proof daw ay experience from other countries like Mexico, and then for a while Canada was also thinking about it. Pero statistics had shown na hindi naman talaga nakakapigil ng krimen.
Interview lang.
Sir.
Mimo, interview lang. Tapos punta ako doon. Sorry, pinapatawag.
Hinahanap na kayo, sir. Yeah, anyway, effective ba talaga to as a scam busting, crime busting method?
Hindi, it is not 100% effective, no? Kasi ito po yung first step, eh. For example, ngayon, sa dami nang natatanggap natin ng mga mensahe, di ba? Na kung ano-ano, na smishing, yung papapuntahin ka sa isang link. Kung natuklasan mo na sinusubukan kang scam, pag nagsumbong ka sa polis o sa otoridad, paano nila malalaman kung sino yung nag-scam sa'yo? O sino yung nagsubok na mag-scam sa'yo? Eh, walang may-ari ng number na yon. So at least dito, pag may nagsubok mag-scam sa'yo, pwede ka nang pumunta sa otoridad, and later on, pwede malaman kung sino may-ari ng number na yon. So may mananagot doon sa pagtangka ng pag-scam sa'yo. Okay? Number one yan. Number two, ang hindi pa ma-prevent ito, Luchi, is yung mga legal na promo naman. Di ba, may legal na promo, tanggap tayo ng tanggap ng text. Kaya yung susunod na batas na ipapasa namin, pagbalik natin sa Kongreso, is yung no call, no text, no email registry. Ibig sabihin, kahit legal, kung ayaw mo makatanggap ng kahit anong ganun, magre-rehistro ka doon sa no call, no text, no email registry. And hindi ka pwedeng padalan ng kahit anong legal na promo kasi nakalista ka doon. Pero hindi pa napapasa yun. So concentrate muna tayo sa SIM card registration. So importante dito, lahat ng may-ari ng SIM dapat maging responsable sa pag-aari nila ng SIM.
Pero
Congressman, ang isang...
napapraning mga tao dyan. I mean, follow up lang ha. Kasi
Yes,
kailangan din patunayan nyo na sa pag-register ng mga SIM card ay hindi rin naman napuput at risk yung data privacy. Siyempre na pinangangalagaan. Tapos baka mamaya, there's always the danger na sinesurvey na pala kami. Nagsisurveillance na. Kasi siyempre, lahat ng contact numbers namin nasa people that we don't know, really. How do you assuage the fear of the public that this very precious data will not be used against us in any way?
No, first of all, yung datos at na registration, hindi po mapupunta sa gobyerno yan. Ang may hawak po niyan is yung telco. So, it's the same. Kung postpaid, di ba, hawak din ng telco lahat ng datos na yan. So, kung nagkaroon ng leak, isa lang ang panggagalingan, yung telco. Kasi, pag pumunta ka sa reseller, di ba kahit saan nakakabili ng SIM card, no? Hindi ka pwede magparehistro doon. Sa telco ka pa rin magpaparehistro. For example, bumili ka sa isang tindahan ng SIM, deactivated SIM yun, hindi active. So, para maging active siya, mag-register ka online sa telco. Bibigay mo yung ID mo,
So makikilala ka, in short, yeah. Where before, you could buy a prepaid card na hindi naman nila alam kung sino ka, di ba?
Yes, ng telco. But the telco has to protect their business. Imagine kung ilang milyong subscriber ang mawawala sa kanila kung sakaling sabihin na yung data breach nang galing sa telco. Number 1 yan. Number 2, ang lalaki po ng penalty dito kung sakaling magkaroon ng data breach, no? Hanapin ko lang. Kanina binasa ko na yung ano. Sige, while we're talking, hanap. Ayan.
From 10,000 to 1 million, sir?
Hindi 10,000. For breach of confidentiality, for breach of confidentiality, 500,000 to 4 million.
Oh.
For breach of confidentiality due to negligence, 500,000 to 4 million ulit. So, ang laki ng fine nito. So, hindi naman siguro gagawin ng... wala naman siguro nasa tamang pag-iisip na gagawin po ito.
Pero ano yung penalty niyan? Per person ba yan o per breach? Kasi merong mga mass data breach eh. Paano yung ganyang pag-penalize ng mga telco? Kasi medyo may kamahalan yan.
Hindi, yan. The penalty of a fine of not less than 500,000
Yes.
but not more than 4 million should be imposed upon PTEs, its agents, or its employees who shall reveal or disclose any information or data. So even that's for one breach. That's not for multiple breaches.
Okay, so may imprisonment din siyang kasama.
Dito po, wala po siyang...
Kumpanya kasi di ba, yung telco ang...
Yeah.
Oo.
So
Well,
parang
sir,
civil liability lang yan.
There is, because without prejudice, a prosecution under this act shall be without prejudice to any liability or violation of any provision of the revised penal code. So may criminal liability to.
Yes, sir.
So,
Sir, I think we all agree na masyadong maluwag naman talaga yung pagbebenta ng SIM card sa Pilipinas eh. Kahit saan kanto, pwede ka makabili ng SIM card ngayon eh. But on the other hand, yung online registration, as you put it, it's online registration, magbibigay ka ng government ID, I suppose online. But what's to stop anybody from sending online a fake photocopy of an ID and then registering that under, for example, my name or Roby's name, and then doing crime? I mean,
Ito po. For providing, wala pa yung crime, just for providing false or fictitious information or for using fictitious identifications or fraudulent identification. Ibig sabihin, nagbigay kang peking impormasyon.
Yes, sir.
Nagbigay kang peking address. Nagbigay kang peking ID. The penalty of imprisonment ranging from 6 months to 2 years or a fine of not less than 100,000 but not more than 300,000.
Yes, sir. I understand, sir. I understand that there's a penalty provision there, but do the telcos have the capability to check each and every applicant for registration online to check their identities, the veracity of their identities? Would they have that capability to begin with?
Wala, Roby, no? So, siyempre, pag nagpresenta naman tayo ng ating mga IDs, there's a presumption of regularity, no? Ibig sabihin, ito pag nahuli kang mali o peke o hindi tama yung binigay mong impormasyon, ito po ang magiging penalty, no? But that will prevent the people from trying to give fictitious or false information.
On a practical level, because we said register online, but is that really how it's going to be designed? I guess this goes beyond the law itself, no? But how the telcos will actually handle this. But how is that considered? Will it actually be online, or does it have to actually be a face-to-face physical showing up at a telco
Parang postpaid na
branch?
application.
No, online. Kasi ang iniiwasan natin dito is, nung una kasi, ang unang version, house version, is yung reseller. Pwede kang, pagbili mo doon, pwedeng doon ka mag-rehistro, di ba? Sa dami ng reseller, sa dami ng nagtitinda niyan, ang daming posibleng magkaroon ng breach, di ba? Minsan, maliliit na tindahan lang yan. Baka iniiwan-iwan lang yung files kung saan-saan. O hindi naman malalaking tindahan yan. At yung SIM card pwedeng naipasa-pasa na, binili ng isang reseller, pinasa doon sa isang reseller. So, maaaring magkaroon ng loophole. Kaya ang ginawa dito, deactivated yung SIM, doon ka na lang mag-register online, direkta sa telco. Para yung telco ang may responsibilidad. Isa na lang ang may responsibilidad ngayon na magtago ng impormasyon. Hindi na katulad dati na yung reseller magtatago ng impormasyon, tapos ipapasa niya doon sa telco, so dalawa. So kung nagkaroon ng breach, magtuturoan, hindi sa amin yan, doon sa kabila. Hindi sa amin yan, doon sa kabila. Ngayon, isa lang ang magtatago. And yung information, hindi ipapasa, hindi ipapasa to ng telco sa gobyerno. They will not pass it on to the NTC. They will just certify that they have a registry and update the registry. So example, ang ganitong karami nakarehistrong cellphone numbers, ganun po. Pero yung mismong pangalan, hindi po yan ipapasa sa gobyerno. So ang magtatago lang po niyan is yung telco.
No, the responsibility and accountability, that's very, very clear, Congressman. I guess siguro yung tanong namin is coming from experience. This goes to basically KYC, di ba? Know your client systems. And if we base it on, for example, experience with some banks who tried to get early on online KYC systems, noong una, very impressive. And then eventually, a lot of them had to actually back up because they couldn't actually handle people registering online. And there were actually loopholes and gaps and weaknesses in the system. Now, when we open up to a mass product, like, I'm just trying to imagine the practicality and the reality of whether or not that will actually be handled online.
Parang logistical nightmare yan, sir, kasi, di ba? I mean, you imagine how many subscriptions do we have right now in the country? I would imagine about 150 million or so. That's just
more or less.
assume.
Mas madami nga,
Yeah, diba?
madami nga yung subscriptions kaysa sa dami ng tao. No, but I'll go back to that. No? That was my exact question. No? Yung how does parang di ba kung online, paano yung KYC, yung know your client, di ba? So parang ang proposal doon is, meron sinabi silang system, meron daw iba na ngayon, na pag nag-register ka, mag-video call and then face front, face left, face right. So dapat mag-match yung picture doon sa ID. And that is the telco's responsibility because within 60 days upon the effectivity of the act, dapat ready na sila magtanggap ng rehistro, no? And within 180 days, ibig sabihin 180 days, pag naging batas to, dapat makapag-rehistro ko ang ating mga kababayan. Of course, ang nakikita kong problem dito is whether online or not online is yung nakagawian na natin na kung kailan yung last day, baka naman doon magdagsaan. So, baka doon magka-problema, di ba? Maybe the server, I'm just assuming a situation na baka yung server can accommodate this much. Pero kung lahat naman ng subscriber o in the last day na mag-rehistro, doon baka magka-problema. But I have faith in the telcos that they will foresee this because sa ilalim ng batas, sila po mandated na tumanggap ng rehistro.
Congressman, pagkapasan yung batas, you will need to flesh it out still, no? The government, hindi kayo. Yung mga implementing rules. Sa nakikita nyo, ano pa yung mga posibleng contentious issues kapag ginagawa na yung mga implementing rules and regulations?
Wala naman. Because maliwanag dito, within 60 days dapat lumabas yung IRR, no? And yung IRR naman cannot go over and above the intention of the law. No? So hindi siya pwedeng lumampas. Ililiwanagin lang dito yung step-by-step procedure kung paano ito ipapatupad.
Congress.
But I mean, isipin natin, sa dami ng natatanggap natin ng mga text messages, mga smishing messages ngayon, ano ba yung solusyon? Kung hindi ito yung gagawin natin, what is the solution? Diba? This is the first step.
Congressman, may phone-in question asking for a friend. Pwede ba raw kahit ilang number ang pwedeng i-register?
Kahit ilang po ang gusto nyo, kaya lang kailangan registrado.
Kahit yung teleponong iniiwan lang sa kotse, pwedeng i-register yon.
O nasa opisina.
O nasa ilalim ng lababo yung telepono, pwede rin i-register yon.
Pwede po yun. Sino kaya yung mga...
Dapat i-register.
Sino kaya mga nag-iiwan ng telepono sa opisina?
Sir, phone-in request lang yun eh. Wala kaming kinalaman doon.
Iba naman daw.
Ano yun, office?
Ang downside niyan ay hindi ba parang yung mga, ang dami rin hindi makakapag-register for whatever reason, halimbawa yung mga disabled, no? Or yung mga, yung mga marginalized, sir. This is going to be hard for them, right? Hindi naman lahat may ID. Nakita natin yan sa ayuda. Ang daming hindi maka-avail ng ayuda dahil wala rin.
Tsaka naka-online phones pa. Daming
Yung mga
online
yan,
phones.
sir, hindi sila pwedeng magkaroon
Analog
ng
phones.
SIM. Dahil,
Hindi, pwede.
ang daming madidisenfranchise, di ba?
Ang dami pong ID. Passport, Philippine ID. Ito yung national ID na tinatawag. SSS ID, GSIS ID, driver's license, NBI clearance. NBI clearance, kung wala kang ID, pwede ka naman kumuha NBI clearance. O police clearance, firearms license, BRC license, IDP license, OWA license, BIR ID, Voters ID, Senior Citizens ID, United Multi-Purpose Identification Card, PWD card. Ang dami po nun.
Ang dami ring mga gumagawa ng fake na ganyan, sir. So, nakakatakot nga rin na baka mamaya fake IDs din yung nagagamit. I guess what I'm saying is we go back to the basic question of really, how can this really help prevent crime? Because, it might even induce more crimes because, there's going to be a lot of faking going on, and that's so easy. Especially in these here parts, sabi nga nila. Daming fake dito.
It is a very, very valid concern. That is really one of my concerns. No? But kaya nga dinagyan ng penal provision para doon naman sa magsasabit ng fake na datos. But again, kung hindi po natin gagawin to, parang wala, nagrereklamo yung ating mga kababayan, ang daming natatanggap na messages tapos wala tayong ginagawang action. No? So, wala namang batas na 100%, di ba? Saka ang batas naman kahit perfecto ang batas, nakadepende pa rin yan sa implementasyon. No? So, hopefully, because there is a well-written law, hopefully, yung implementation ay magawa ng mabuti. But
Sir,
we have to admit, we have to be practical. No? We have to admit ourselves na siyempre, yung criminal, ngayon pa lang, hindi pa batas to. Nag-iisip na yun kung paano lusutan tong batas na to. We have to admit that. No? So, kaya nga hindi tayo naghihinto gumawa ng batas. Tapos, lalo na to, teknolohiya. Technology is so fast. So, talagang yung batas ang hahabol dun sa teknolohiya para maproteksyon naman yung ating mga mamamayan. Because, mas marami na tayong transaction na gagawin online. Katulad nito. Yung e-government and e-governance, nasa technical working group na tayo. Imagine, ang daming transaction tapos hindi natin naproteksyonan yung ating mga mga kababayan.
Sir, before we move on to another topic, sir, pahabol lang ako. How about regulating those who will have access to the information to the registry? For example, law enforcement agencies and so on down the line. Who will have access and how will they get access?
Only if there's a subpoena. So they cannot get access unless there is a subpoena.
So yung follow-up bill niyo, Congressman, kailan niyo balak i-file? Yung sabi mong
Naka-file
phase
na
2
yun.
ng ano?
Naka-file na yun, Ami. Actually,
Nasaan na siya ngayon? Nasaan na siya?
Sa committee, pinag-usapan na namin sa committee, but syempre, nag-recess kami. But during the recess, na hindi magtatrabaho, hindi magtrabaho yung committee ng ICT, yung ating Vice Chairman na si Vice Chairman Chino Almario is the head of the technical working group on the e-government and the e-governance. Kasi madami nag-file. May nag-file ng e-government, may nag-file ng e-governance. So pag-iisahin na lang natin, ito-consolidate lahat ng mga bills na yan at magagawa tayo ng isang e-governance bill. So ang mangyayari, ang sequence nito is ito, tapos either mauna yung no call, no text, no email registry or baka mauna yung e-governance. Depende doon sa kakalabasan ng technical working group para makita kung ano yung mga provision ng e-governance na dapat ayusin.
Sir, balikan.
Meron ba mga exemptions to, sir? Meron ba mga exempted dyan? Halimbawa yung mga intelligence,
No exemption.
I mean, agencies. Walang exemption?
Wala po.
Kasi,
Wala po.
I mean, even among journalists, di ba, investigative journalists, it provides safe cover for them, even for mga whistleblowers, halimbawa. So, wala na. It's hard to conduct any kind of investigation.
No exemptions because, alam mo, Luchi, you exempt one, you exempt everyone, di ba?
Yeah.
Parang may exempt ka, o bakit hindi? Isa lang exempt natin. O bakit hindi ito, pati ito. Hanggang mamaya na, pati ito. Padami na exempt. Kaya wala pong exemption to.
Congressman, I mean, just on the assumption that none of us can anticipate technology, or on the assumption even that baka may technology dyan na hindi natin alam. And there might be technologies that eventually might be able to mask your number. Diba? Let's say gusto ko lang mag-spam ng mga tao or gusto ko lang for whatever reason, or I want to call somebody anonymously for whatever reason, legitimate or illegitimate. But what about that kind of an act? Is that automatically considered by the law something that is flouting the law and that can actually be penalized? Any attempt to mask, for example?
Any attempt to mask, ito may term na gamit yan spoofing. Yan, refers to the act of transmitting misleading or inaccurate information about the source of the phone call or text message with the intent to defraud, cause harm, or wrongfully obtain anything of value. Di ba? Yan yung sinasabi mo, Roby. May penalized rin yan, yung spoofing.
Pero merong ano dyan there are specific intents considered there, di ba? Some to defraud or to commit a crime and so on. But in a scenario, for example, that Luchi imagines, let's say a reporter, a journalist, a researcher who for whatever reason wants to hide his or her number, none of those intentions come into play.
No, but it depends on what you use. If you use a SIM to do that, then it is penalized. Because your SIM is not registered. Di ba? Ibig sabihin, kung ginawa mo yung gamit ay SIM at yung SIM mo ay hindi rehistrado, bawal yan. Kung ginawa mo yun at yung SIM mo ay rehistrado, hindi bawal yan.
I see.
Depende na lang kung ano yung pinadala mong mensahe. Doon ma-determine kung nilabag mo yung batas o hindi.
Sir, pahabol ako one more. So far, we've been talking about
Total, nag-adjourn na kami.
Yes, sir.
Okay na.
We've been talking about registrations of SIM cards for the use of text and calling. Pero there are a lot of SIM cards also being used exclusively for data. I'm talking about yung mga nasa iPads, hindi pwedeng pantawag yun. Also yung mga nasa mga pocket Wi-Fis. Is this also regulated? Will they have to be registered as well?
Yes, all SIMs. Actually, ang title nito is not SIM card na, SIM na. Kasi meron na kayong phone na hindi mo na kailangan ng SIM card. May
the new one.
eSIM.
eSIM.
So ang title na nito is an app requiring the registration of the SIM identity module. So hindi na siya yung SIM, hindi na yung card. Kasi baka dito mawala yung card, di ba? At may phones ako na alam na hindi na kailangan. May eSIM na tinatawag yata sila. So you have to register.
Okay.
So in the same manner, kasi lahat ng SIM na lalabas sa merkado at lahat ng nakalabas pag naging batas to, automatically i-deactivate yun. Yung mga nasa mga reseller, yung hindi pa nabibenta. So pag bumili ka ng SIM, deactivated yun. Deactivated yung SIM na yun. Tapos magiging active lang siya kapag nirehistro mo na siya.
Okay. Congressman Toby Tiangco, sir, maraming salamat po.
Thank you.
Yes, good evening. Good evening.
Thank you, Congressman.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.
Congressman Tiangco is chairperson of the House Committee on Information and Communications Technology. Let's start up another conversation after a break. Stay with us. The Chiefs will be right back.
The Philippine peso continues to tumble and could likely hit 65 against the greenback, according to some economists.
The local currency plunged to 59 pesos against the US dollar before closing at 58.98 on Wednesday.
Agrikultura, unahin mo, pasiguraduhin mo may makakain ng tao. Pangalawa, ayusin mo para po yung ating pong mga foreign exchange earners, katulad ng foreign direct investments, yun ang kailangan nun natin bigyan ng pansin. In other words, we need an economic transformation.
To help offset the peso's weakening, the Bangko Sentral has been on a rate hike spree, the latest of which was a 50 basis point hike.
Ang problema, nasa isang mundo tayo na halos 150 trillion ang pera na umiikot. So pag sinabing benta ko peso, bili ako dollar, goodbye tayo.
A lawmaker sees the Philippine peso on a free fall and could breach between 65 and 68 pesos against the US dollar. Can government stop the plunge? We ask economist Jonathan Ravelas. Sir, magandang gabi and welcome back to Chiefs.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, sir.
Magandang gabi, sir.
Thank you, sir, for joining us.
Challenging yung tanong na yan.
Yeah, oo nga, sir. Well, siyempre, we start off with that. Si Congressman Julius sa Senate nagsabi, we could hit 65 to 68 ang pagkasabi pa niya in the near term. And at the same time, Senate also says na the President and government are basically helpless to stop it. Do you agree with that assessment? And do you think there are some things we can still do?
Well, I guess it's a dollar world. I guess, well, in the last so many years, we've seen the saying, when the U.S. catches a cold, Asia gets the flu. No? So eventually, this situation is really fueled by the rising U.S. dollar. So talagang there's no choice for the Philippines but to either do two things. One, match the strategy of the U.S. Fed and raise interest rates. No? We've seen this in the early part of the year. We were very conservative in raising interest rates just by a quarter, and suddenly from 52, 50, nagising na lang tayo, nasa 55 to 56 na tayo. So you can't fight the Fed. So it's a matter of really trying to go with the flow of the depreciation of the peso, mainly because of the situation. No? And it's all driven by inflation. Kung wala yung Ukraine war, I don't think we will probably see a much exaggerated depreciation of the peso. And in the past, we've seen this before. It happened in 1994, no? But at that time, the peso was, we were seeing a lot of influx of portfolio investments coming to the country. In 1993, 1994. Kaya hindi natin masyadong naramdaman yung pagbulusok ng piso, no? Eventually, we saw that few years after, during the Asian financial crisis. So that eventually saw the peso from 23 all the way to 46, no?
Mr. Ravelas, ay maraming mga tao, di ba? Parang yung iba, I mean, obviously a lot of people monitor the dollar for very basic things for all of us. Yung mga OFW, minamatyagan nila. Yung iba, may kakarampot lang naman akong dolyar. Ang tanong ko lang naman, gusto ko bang ibenta ngayon o hindi? Pero kayo yung expert, may mga nabanggit na kayo. Minamatyagan nyo yung interest rate sa US, nabanggit nyo yung inflation, nabanggit nyo. Siguro, a quick crash course lang. I'm really eager to learn. Sampulan niya kami. Kayo, sa umaga, anong binabantayan nyo na balita? Ano yung mga binabantayan nyo, and then somehow this gives you an idea on what will happen, not only to the dollar but to the economy in general?
Okay, well, for me, no, I wake up at 4:30 in the morning to start reading. 70% of what I read is not about the Philippines. It's about the global economy, the US. So basically, we are still a dollar world. So majority of transactions are still driven by the dollar. So 70% of what makes the global economy move is driven by the US. So you look at the next 30% just focusing on the Philippines. So basically, why is it that the dollar is so strong is that when a currency starts raising interest rates, the tendency is everybody goes to the dollar. Diba? Let's put it this way. It's like we're having coffee at Starbucks and suddenly meron ka nakita mga nagja-jogging. Kahit nagkikwentuhan tayo, di ba, napapalingon tayo, di ba? Whether lalaki o babae, depende kung anong suot, kung kulay pula, dilaw. So same thing when it comes to the currency. When a currency starts raising interest rates, everybody's attracted kasi mas malaki yung kita. But because the value of the dollar is much stronger, people are fascinated with the dollar.
Okay, so how does it look right now as far as Fed rates? I mean, does it look like they're going to raise interest rates some more within the year, and how much more?
Okay, very good question. In the last 50 years, you need to triumph against inflation. And normally, let's face it, para sa normal na mamamayan natin, no, every year nagkakaroon tayo ng increase ng sweldo. Diba? But that increase in salary, whether it's driven by your performance, it's really just to offset the rise of prices. Typically, yung mga normal increase is the rise of inflation. So medyo nakakaangat ka lang just to highlight the prices. But in the situation today, interest rates must go higher than inflation so that inflation can attract, so that people will be attracted to save money than spend. Diba? You put your money in the bank so that you feel na, I'm saving money than spending it. The problem today is that we're confronted by two things. The first is the reopening of the economy. Diba? The businesses have reopened and tulad nating lahat, gusto natin makalabas. Diba? Everybody's slowly going up, trying to normalize themselves. That's creating a lot of demand. People go out to the malls, kahit hirap sila, the spending is there kasi gusto nila to act normal. On the other hand,
And that's
because
driving up inflation. Yes.
that's initially driving inflation, but because we're importing practically everything, with the peso depreciating by almost 15% since start of the year, malaki na yung cost natin. Diba? So right now, inflation's at 6.3%. In the US, it's at 8.5%. So when you look at the Philippine interest rate, the central bank is at 4.25% versus an inflation of 6.3%. So kailangan tumaas. Otherwise, if you're just investing at 4.3%, 4.25%, talo ka. So kailangan tumaas lalo yung interest rate beyond 6% so that you will gain. So that means there's still a lot of pressure for domestic interest rates to rise to at least 5.75 so that we will trump inflation. In the US, malayo yung pupuntahan niya kasi nasa 3.25 lang yung overnight rate niya, ang inflation niya 8.4. So kailangan aggressively, mas mabilis yung pagtaas niya so that people will, inflation will slow down. That's the challenge. So that's why the Fed...
So malayo-layo pa pala itatakbo ng dollar, no? Ng interest rates.
Okay, let me just give you a good parameter. Right now, the dollar yen's between 143. The dollar index is around 113. So these are benchmarks, no? So nakikita ko na magpipik yung dollar when the dollar index is at 120. The dollar yen or the Japanese yen, which is at 143, should go at least 150. So yung sinasabi ni Representative Salceda, most likely yung 65 to 68 could eventually materialize. But ako, in the near term, which is probably between now and year end, we could probably hit 6180 or 6190 before we eventually get to see some adjustments, no? So hopefully the remittances will still come. But the sad part about our remittances is, number one, everybody, yung mga OFW, kung nagpapadala ng $300 worth, yung eksakto lang. So ngayon, hindi na 300 padadala niya, konti na lang. Less than 300. Kasi the value has become bigger. Diba?
Well, most analysts are expecting about the US Fed to continue raising interest rates. At sinabi ng Bangko Sentral, although we've had several major interest rate increases as well, sinabi na ng Bangko Sentral they're not going to match what the US Fed is doing. So although we are expecting more interest rate hikes before the year ends, so what else can we do? By way of sinabi ni Congressman Salceda, dapat daw we have to strengthen, we have to implement long-term reforms. Ano ba yung pwedeng gawin? Kasi in the near term, yan lang ang magagawa natin Yung balance, the needs, interest rate, inflation. Nagre-reklamo na rin yung mga umuutang na mga negosyante. Paano naman daw sila yung mga interest rate na yan? But in the meantime, what else can be done?
Okay, very good question. I think one thing that we have to remember are what the previous administration has done before they stepped down. So they were able to do a lot of structural reforms, such as number one, revision of the Public Services Act, ease of doing business. So anything to do with competitiveness, we've improved, including CREATE. So now that the peso has depreciated, in the eyes of investors, magandang tingnan ng Pilipinas, mura tayo. In the last 8 months, as of August of this year, we've seen one of the major contributors in the second quarter is the tourism sector. So at that time, we've actually seen tourists coming to the Philippines, no? So number one na napupunta dito yung mga Filipinos who are living overseas. Hindi na sila considered na Pilipino eh. They might have US citizens, but now, unlike before the pandemic, they were living with relatives. Ngayon, they practically live in hotels. No? So talagang it generated a lot of activity. Second, the South Koreans are back. So tourism is actually a good place for the Philippines today. So that's one. Second, sinabi ni Congressman Salceda is the foreign direct investments. The weaker peso eventually is a good opportunity for us to attract this type of investments. The problem is we continue to tell them to go to our PEZA zone. You need to understand that matataas yung presyo ng bilihin ngayon. We need to attract companies to manufacture in the Philippines, but not in the PEZA zone. Kasi sa PEZA zone, pa-export yan eh. It doesn't benefit us. We attract them to come here because you want them to take advantage of the more than 100 million Filipinos. The demographic age of Filipinos are around 26.5. So sila yung malaki yung potential income capacity to spend. Now that Filipinos are more international centric, meaning people are more global in trying to recognize brands. People will buy more imported products. But if these products will be manufactured here, it will be cheaper. So that should benefit our consumers. It will create jobs and take advantage of our demographic dividend. Dapat ganyan ang gawin ng gobyerno so that we're able to help them not only create jobs, it will also create lower prices. So these are the things that we should do. So basically, these investors are waiting for one is driven by revitalizing infrastructure. So ano yung magiging state ng build back better or it's a build more, whatever they call it for the infrastructure. The second is optimizing these opportunities so that we're catering to one which is being offered by the DTI is the IT BPO, the call center business. Because they're the ones benefiting. That's why the finance department has extended the work from home privileges, di ba? Kasi eto, mura ngayon mag-operate dito sa Philippines with the weaker peso. Now, one thing that makes it good for the Filipino is that nandyan yung heart ng Filipino, nandyan yung magandang EQ natin, di ba? Lalo na yung call center or customer service, di ba? You talk to our people, they'll very polite to tell you, sir, magbayad po kayo ng utang nyo, pero kahit minimum, nakatawa pa sila. As long as you're able to pay. Customer service, they're very patient. Kahit nagagalit ka na sa kanila, they're there listening to you. That makes at lot close to $30 billion coming into the country. So that...
Mr. Ravelas, on those intangibles, wala naman tayo lahat masasabi, di ba? Those are the intangibles. But on the weakness of the peso, creating an opportunity as well, making it as more attractive, one of the things that the government is saying, the BSP is saying, is actually if you look at the peso relative to other currencies, we're still performing relatively better than the others. But on that point, does that necessarily cancel out that window of opportunity created by a weak peso, especially if all the other countries are saying, kami rin naman mahina rin naman kami, ano rin naman yan. We have that same condition in our country right now.
Well, in a way, one thing that makes it different to us is that we're trying to spend on our infrastructure. We're creating a catch-up. That's why we have one of the highest growth even pre-pandemic. Even in the second quarter, we still grew above 7.3%. That is still around second compared to other countries like Vietnam. Mataas pa rin yung growth rate natin. We can actually do that provided we just have to eventually streamline, as what Congressman Salceda said. We need to streamline and get our act together so that we'll do it faster. Diba? So these are things that government and private sector should do, especially at this point in time. Even telling exporters to eventually take advantage of this situation. Kasi hindi katulad ng ibang countries, pag mahina yung pera nila, their trading strategy or their selling strategy is by volume. Lakihan ko yung volume ko, liitan ko yung patong ko para dumami yung business ko. Tayo hindi ganon eh. Tayo gusto natin maintain the margin kahit konti yung mabenta ko. Diba? Kailangan yung strategy natin wholesale ang dating so that we can create that set of business particularly for exports.
Okay. Mr. Ravelas, maraming salamat po.
You're welcome.
Thank you,
sir. Salamat po.
Thank you.
And that is it for the Chiefs. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. Ako po si Roby Alampay.
I'm Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
I'm Luchi Cruz-Valdes of News 5.
I'm Lingao. We are One News, all sides, all the time.